Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of VNture Podcast, brought to you this week by your host, Taros113 and MR. We once again have a guest with us. His name is NoahNovels, and as a continuation from last week's, we'll be talking more on the voice acting side of things. And so, I'd like for him to introduce himself to everyone. Hello, NoahNovels.
Everyone, thanks again for having me on your podcast. I am NoahNovels. Since March of 2020, I have been making kind of on and off visual novel reviews and various other visual novel or anime related content on my channel. And I'm happy to be able to talk about voice acting in visual novels today.
Yeah, and each of us brought some examples of what we remember of cool moments, or maybe not so cool in the bad, worst examples of how we see those voice acting talents used to its fullest potential, hopefully. So
You mentioned that you're somewhat involved in the field of voice acting, right? Could you elaborate more on that?
Definitely. So I'm still very much in like the beginner or newbie phase, as you put it, but I am an aspiring voice actor. I auditioned for a decent amount of stuff like online via like Twitter casting calls or stuff on YouTube or whatnot. I have a demo reel and might not be a super impressive thing to say. I haven't been casting too much yet. I have gotten a couple roles. I just recently actually got to voice various extra characters for an upcoming visual novel. I'm not going to say the name of the visual novel or what have you yet because the demo hasn't released yet. I will be in the demo when it releases, so I'll kind of like share it on my channel then. But I am definitely I'm not like super into the industry yet, but like I am like, working to like kind of like get more experience and work my way into it a bit more. And I definitely would like to talk about like my experiences doing so and also doing the voice acting for that visual novel I mentioned.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's super cool. Just that you're going to be part of an official project, and I'm assuming it's sort of an indie work, right? Like, how did you get involved? Did they reach out, or what was the whole process like?
Yeah, so you are right. It is a more indie visual novel, and I am very excited because I said it when I was, on the last podcast. But visual novels are my favorite medium of storytelling. So getting to actually voice in one is a very amazing experience for me, and I hope it is not the last one I do so in. But as for how they reached out to me, it is a person, a developer who's given me a review copy of their visual novel before. So I've had some previous working experience, I guess you could say, with them. And for this next visual novel, they are going for full voice acting, which I think is amazing and ambitious. And they had some extra characters that said developer knew I am an aspiring voice actor, that I have a demo reel and whatnot. So developer asked me my rates and if I would like to audition for the extra roles, and which I did, and I got the parts, and I am now part of the visual novel.
that sounds so cool, especially since, like you mentioned, having a full voice acting seems super ambitious. Most VNs tend to focus on the main cast, whether or not protagonist included depends, and the extras, the villagers, A's, and local people often get absolutely nothing.
And
So
no, definitely. It's very, especially again for like an indie project, especially it's very ambitious to have full voice acting. But I do think it is going to go a long way in like enhancing the story because what I know of the characters in the world is very interesting, and the fact that I'll be able to like connect with them on another level hearing them, I think it's going to be a good visual novel. And I'm not like sponsored, like I'm not saying that just because I'm in it. Like I'm really looking forward to seeing how it comes together.
that's how that will look like. Definitely let me know when it comes out. I want to hear that. Huh.
So,
Absolutely.
so I'm not too familiar with the whole, I guess, workflow process involved. But do you meet with them in person, or is this something entirely auditioning and recording online?
So it's definitely different. Sorry, did you have something else to say?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess, and then just how do you handle a studio or the equipment or the setting for to record? I don't know much about the whole stuff at all.
I got you. So it's definitely different for like every project. As of right now, so I'm actually doing it in as of we're recording this right now. I'm actually in my homemade recording studio, and what I did when I decided I wanted to get serious about voice acting again. The reason for that is a long story that I will not bog you down with. But when I decided, when I was ready for that, I emptied out this like closet I had that was just full of like a bunch of random crap I didn't want like filling my room with. I bought from this website, I can't remember the website, just a bunch of like soundproof foam. And then this is when I was getting a lot of unemployment money because everything was shut down because of the pandemic. And I figured go big or go home if I'm really serious about this. So I bought a Newman XLR condense microphone, and it's I got along with it, I got like a microphone stand, pop filter, basically everything I need to set this up. It came together just a little under $1,000, but I've been using it for my videos and my voice acting since then. So while I think I can get like pretty much studio level quality while recording, I think right now my audio is going through my headphones, so it might not be an exact representation. But if you listen to like my recent videos or visual novel reviews, the audio is very clear. But that's not what you asked about. You asked about kind of like the workflow. So in this particular case, me and the developer don't live near each other. And for indie projects, it's not very practical to like, only cast local and go to a recording studio or whatnot. So they just reached out to me with like the audition lines. I kind of like asked about like direction or tone and whatnot. I got like any feedback I needed. I recorded and sent to them, and they liked it. And then I like finalized, made sure there were any like changes for like extra lines or anything I needed to do. So for indie projects, it's typically something similar where they'll either post a casting call online and go through auditions, or they could always, if they like have like a roster of previously used talent, or they can go through an agency and they can just reach out to people directly that way. And then typically they'll discuss like rates, stuff like that, come to an agreement. And then once they have like all kind of like the technical side of it figured out, that's when they will get like the script with the kind of like, the delivery, like the emotion you're looking for, if they want like multiple takes. Sometimes what they'll do, this wasn't done in my case, but they'll have like either a Zoom or a Discord recording session where like they'll record in real time and kind of like direct them as they're recording. So you kind of get like that studio experience, but in a remote way. Not everyone does that. Like for me, I just got like the script with like, the lines and the emotion and whatnot. And I just send it to them, and any feedback I incorporated into my next recordings. But as for like indie projects, a lot of time it is like that sort of kind of like remote style where, and I think it's great, it gives opportunity for like more diverse talent where like, maybe you couldn't be cast in something because you couldn't like, drive to a recording studio like a state away or something. Like now, a lot more people, so long as you have decent equipment, you have the opportunity to voice in these like really cool passion projects, even if you are states and states away. I know it's different for like bigger budget titles and companies like Crunchyroll, the anime dubbing company, likes people to like go to their studios a lot, but like indie smaller type projects are a lot more flexible with like who they hire and like how they go about like recording and whatnot.
I'm curious when it comes to process. I would like to expand. Are there any exercises you perform to keep your voice in shape, or maybe to prepare for the role?
So for preparing for the role, what I'll definitely do is before the recording session, I try to like print out or a physical copy of the script or save it as a PDF on my phone. And I just like to, as I go about, like say I am recording on a Tuesday, I like to the Monday, as I'm going about my day, when I realize I have a few minutes to kill or I'm not doing anything, I like to go over the script, and I like to really like study and analyze like what are these characters going through, what is like, because every line should have like a purpose or a meaning. It's kind of like something important storytelling, obviously. So I really like to think about the headspace of the characters, what's being achieved with this line, and what are like the different directions I can do with this line, because I like to do like 2 or 3 different takes of each individual line if we're not doing a live recording session for variety's sake. The danger is that is like sometimes if you get stuck in a certain delivery, you could just be sending 3 takes of like the same delivery. So for preparing for my character, I like to prepare more than a day beforehand, but at least the day before recording, I like to really study my script and get into like my character's headspace or whatnot. So that way, when it's Tuesday and it's time for me to record, it's not like I'm just discovering these lines and characters for the first time. Like I want to feel some semblance of like connection to like really sell that I'm voicing this character.
You mentioned deliveries, right? And from what I understood, do you prepare variants to send to the employer?
Could you say that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah. Do you prepare variants of different deliveries of the same line that you send to the one who employs you?
I definitely do that. So when I audition, definitely I will do 2 or 3 different takes of each line, just to show like variety, to show that I have more range than just one delivery. And then when I'm recording for like an actual gig, if it's not a live directed session, I'm not getting like direct feedback on right away, I will do like 2 or 3 different takes of the same line with like different like emotions or tones or pitches, just to like try and give them as many options as possible for like what direction they want to take with this line. And typically it goes pretty well, and if there's like a certain way they wanted it done that I didn't cover, they just message me and I will like record again.
Oh, that's really considerate. Because, there's some indie developers who might be branching out into this stuff in the first time, and they're not really aware of all the intricacies involved in managing voice acting. So, I mean, like I said, I don't know much about it, and it was news to me about providing all the different variations to get the different tone and the emotion and the approach, I guess. So that's actually really cool. I mean, this already would have been really informative if I was hiring someone for voice acting work.
Definitely. And I just kind of like ranted about this stuff. That's like the way I do it. I can't like speak for everyone, but I know like definitely like a lot of voice actors like try to like do that sort of thing, especially for like maybe smaller scale projects. And like you said, if it's like someone's first time, we just kind of like typically we're just all passionate about like storytelling and acting. We all want to come together to make something like really cool and memorable. And in that sense, we try to help each other out as much as we can, because we're all passionate about something, and our passions like bring us together to make something to like show to the world as like the results of our effort and passion. And I just said passion like 10 times. So
You're definitely passionate, okay? But you
so
spoke...
lots of passion.
Yeah, a lot of passion. You spoke about research, that you say you delve deep into the headspace of a character you voice. I know that you spoke that you got an extra role, but do you ask for a context? Do you get script beforehand to give you a clue who you're voicing?
So for this one, the visual novel, I got casted as some extra characters. They were really just like extra one-off characters. So I didn't like ask for context, because like I'm sure the developer doesn't want to be bothered with like coming up with intricate backstories for all these random characters. So just for me myself, what I did is I just kind of like very quickly, because again these are one-off characters, I came up with like quick like personalities, like families, like situations for these characters. That way it just gives me something to work off of than like I have to scream something and I don't know like anything about them. Even just the tiniest bit of context like helps me like form like that character and their voice a bit more. So I kind of created context, and I just don't do anything crazy, because obviously this is not my story. This is just something I'm doing to help me with like delivering these lines. I'm sure there's a lot of voice actors who don't do that because they don't need to. For me, especially since I'm still a beginner, it just helps me a lot to like kind of like create like this context for the character. And obviously I don't do anything too crazy or anything that's going to infringe on the story, just something for myself to keep in mind while I'm recording to give a better performance.
On a different note, I mean, unless you have anything else you wanted to say, Amar?
The only question was about that preparation I had in mind, and since it's not yet time for Noah to share with us his role as a main heroine you can conquer and romance, this will come in time. I have no more questions.
Okay. I just wanted to ask if you had any insights on any visual novels you've read, Noah, that maybe had outstanding voice acting work, or maybe, you had your own criticisms about that, or just if you've noticed any of that stuff.
Absolutely. So one visual novel with voice acting that I really enjoyed is I could default to my usual answer, Umineko When They Cry, but for sake of variety, I'll talk about another visual novel with amazing voice acting. But to make a long story short, Umineko When They Cry's voice acting is top tier, and it really elevates the story to another level. Please play Umineko with voice acting. But another visual novel that had really outstanding voice acting that I think really helped the story was Jisenjo no Mao, The Devil on G-String. That was another like mystery thriller visual novel on Steam, and I think you have to buy the voice acting separately as like DLC, which is kind of annoying, but it's worth it. And I don't know, that story had like a very rich cast of characters, and just the way the scenes, because like some scenes get like so intense and emotional, like had me like very much on the edge of my seat, and to like hear those performances like really bring to life these characters as they're like going through like these emotional character arcs, like it really like elevated the story on another level for me. I'm sure the story still works just as fine without voice acting, but like to me, I always like, if I have the option to choose between voice acting and no voice acting, I will choose voice acting because I think it adds like another layer.
Yeah, I remember. Well, I haven't read Jisenjo yet, but I remember that was one of the earlier Western releases of a visual novel on the Steam storefront, and I think that's when publishers were still trying to figure out how best to go about it, which is why, it has that rare option of you can buy it without the voice acting for cheaper or with it for more expensive. So I think that's where it got started. But yeah, totally. Voice acting adds so much to scenes, especially when you get really emotional segments. There's been some titles I've read that have been okay, but then it's like I kind of have to imagine their voices if the VN is unvoiced. And I think just off the top of my head, when you have a voiced visual novel, you get all the varieties in different voices. Whereas if it's up to my imagination, I'm not that creative about it, and I kind of just say everything in my own mental inner voice. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's expensive though, so I mean, I understand not every indie title can do it.
Yeah, no, I definitely, it's funny you said about like how you kind of like have to imagine the voices. It's funny, whenever I read like a visual novel with no voice acting, if it's like a male protagonist, like I don't know why, I'll always default to like his voice is just my voice. Like he's me for real or something, like I don't know. As for like the any female characters, like typically I think what happens is like I watch like a decent amount of anime, so I've heard like a good fair share of like different voices. Like my brain will like auto generate some like unique voice based off like kind of like tropes I've seen in other anime and like how much they fit with this character. So I do think it is interesting though, like having to like make up voices like on your own. Like it's kind of like a book in that way, obviously. I just personally prefer voice acting just because I like that added layer of like emotional kind of like context you get from these like voice actors' performances. But I think both ways are still like voice acting or no voice acting. I think both are still like really good. It just depends, like, at the end of the day, it's the quality of the writing.
It's interesting because I'm on the other side of that, what you just said. When I'm reading the silent protagonist, I just can't imagine my voice being his. Completely opposite. And it goes both ways, both for male and female characters. And Don't worry, Noah, I can definitely see you being a good tsundere, so you can... I can envision you being a female protagonist tsundere voice. But when it comes to voice acting, definitely it helps with those emotional scenes. But I think there are so much more interesting scenes that they really strike gold with. And one of my examples I have that is very memorable is Gacktun of the Golden Lightning. That's a visual novel inspired by Lovecraftian stories, mixed with steampunk setting. And they have this, let's call it showdown moment. And in a similar to Power Rangers style, they both protagonist and antagonist equip their power armors and the like. And the way they deliver those shouting transformations, it just would work the same way without that.
Definitely, I do think there is like certain like visual novels. I know I just said like both are good, so maybe I'm contradicting myself a bit here, but I do think like there are like certain like stories or lines of dialogue that like, I'm not saying they won't work without voice acting, but I do think voice acting in very specific cases are, I don't want to say necessary, but like in a way like elevate some of the material in a way that it wouldn't work beforehand. Whereas like you'll still read it and it'll still be good, but like to have kind of like the extra like that comes from like the delivery, especially you're saying it's like a showdown scene, it's kind of like hype action, you know, you kind of like get like these over the top yelling, it really sells the scene, you know.
Exactly.
So I never want to say like, I never want to say objectively like, oh, voice acting is a necessity for something, because who am I to say what's a necessity for something, you know. But I do think that like voice acting in general, I think it can elevate most pieces of writing as long as the voice acting's good. But I do think there are like very specific like times where like voice acting like really takes it to like another level. I feel like I might just be repeating myself in slightly different ways.
But definitely on the taking to the next level, I definitely remember two moments in VNs that I read when the voice actors that voiced those characters started singing, and it was just such a good immersive transition. And I don't talk about opening song like some visual novels have an opening segment that is kind of like a trailer. No. In the story itself, there was a segment and purpose for them starting singing, and just the transition from just speaking to singing. It's like, oh, that feels such a good package. And obviously, being those two songs that I remember is very emotional.
Definitely. I mean, singing is definitely, when you have like a story that involves singing to some extent, it is very helpful to have like voice acting and in turn singing, because like, you know, obviously a big part of singing is just like, you know, like hearing or experiencing the music. So it's just kind of hard to fill in those blanks, especially for someone who's maybe not musically inclined like myself. Like if I'm hearing a track and I'm just being like shown lyrics on a screen, very hard for me to like fill in the gaps with my imagination of what this singing sounds like. So I'd say that's definitely one of the instances where like, I don't want to say you ever need voice acting, but if there was an instance where you need voice acting, any story involving singing in any way definitely would be one of those cases.
Just before this recording, I showed me a clip that is very interesting example of not using voice acting, yet achieving some sort of voices via boops and beeps, and it was from Rance Quest, so the 8th in the series of Rance games. And I really wanted to know your thoughts about how, in absence of voice acting, they had to use all the other tricks to sell the dynamic action that was packed in that one scene. And I'll link that in the top comments so others can see.
Well, yeah, no, that was actually a really interesting watch, and it kind of like made me think. That was also my first clip or experience with the Rance series, so thank you for that. So yeah, that was really interesting. I do think visual novels, obviously the most important aspect is the writing because it's very story focused. I do think so much goes into, and I don't know what else to call it, but almost like set dressing. I know this isn't like a movie, but I'm like talking about like the sound design, the music, like the overall like effects or artwork or whatnot. And I do think that there are ways to convey, like tone and like, delivery of these characters without voice acting. And I think it shows like the skill of the people involved in this visual novel who are able to do it. Like the Rance clip, it had all those like beeping noises to kind of convey like the pitch and tone of the characters, giving each character like their own specific type of beeping. It makes you associate that with them, and like it gives them, even though it's not like dialogue, it gives them like character, like each their own individual like performance almost. So like if you have a beep, like you have a beeping sound that's like going faster than the other, you can assume maybe that this character's voice is higher pitch, or they just speak generally in a faster tone. Whereas you have like more kind of like a steady beeping, these people maybe speak at a more like casual volume, or their voice is maybe on the lower side.
That's exactly what happens in that title. Obviously extending from that small clip. Yep, there's so much very slower, and you have beep, 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 and there are some that go very fast. Beep, 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 beep. So yeah, it's exactly as you expected. Yep, they use that trick throughout the entire game. But I think since they found that clever solution to the problem, going back to what you guys discussed, in that way, they avoid huge costs. They have a lot of characters and there is no voice acting whatsoever. So they cut a lot of cost of development and voicing all of those characters.
Absolutely. And that's why kind of like that example, that clip you showed me, that's a great reason why earlier I was hesitant to say any story needs voice acting, because it clip really shows that even without actual voice acting, there are so many creative and different ways you can use to like convey like these characters and how they speak or their tone or emotion. So like that's why I never want to say voice acting is absolutely necessary, because there are other ways to convey that. And I think that Rance clip was really good. Not only the beeps, the music really fit the tone of the scene. There was good sound design besides the beeping. Like everything just came together, so that way I felt like I was never confused with these characters that I was watching. I was never like, man, I wonder what he's thinking or how he's saying that line. I just like, I knew thanks to like the really expertly crafted like nature of the sound design. So that's why voice acting to me, it's always a plus and I'll like it. But I almost never want to say it is necessary, because there are other ways to convey tone and emotion. And I think it's a really cool thing, like almost an art form when people are able to do that, because that is manipulating sound to like convey emotion. Like that is such an insane talent, and that is very cool.
Yeah, I think limitation brings creativity, and that's one of those examples. Yes, you don't have voice actors. Be creative and create those emotions. And whenever you see that blossom into something special, like, damn, that's a good trick they used. And I have one more example that I prepared, and this time I don't know if it can even be replicated without voice acting, but it requires a little bit of build-up. So let me set the stage, right? Okay. There is a pair of characters divided by fate and time-space continuum. A major in military and his secretary. She loves him, as well as idolizes ancient heroes of old. He is cool-headed, cold even, straight to the point type, until a matter pertaining to his family pops up and his personality flips into deranged and obsessive. Fast forwarding because I don't want to spoil, but due to unfortunate circumstances, she dies and he gets thrown into the past.
Wow, spoilers.
Okay.
You just
There
can't,
had
just
to
can't
be
say
some.
the title of the VN and we're good.
I mean, this is MR we're talking about.
Oh my god. Don't psychoanalyze me, okay?
I don't know if I can be involved with anything that involves spoilers. I'm very anti-spoilers. I might just have to leave now.
Let me finish.
I'm so disgusted with MR's actions.
Oh my god, let me finish, guys. Okay, he gets thrown into the past, okay? He becomes one of the heroes of old, clad in a full white armor. And that armor makes him have a unique voice actor, the new one from the previous guy. Later on in the story, and finds himself in another timeline. In this timeline, she was never his secretary, and consequently, she avoided dying. Fast forward a lot, because again, many games, there is a scene. When a story is nearing its completion, they tag team. So the hero of all, the guy who was the major in military in his original timeline, and they have a task to do. This is his last chance to say goodbye, to say what was left unsaid. For the very first time, he takes off his mask, voice actor reverts to the original, and he says, "Thank you."
Oh, that is First of all, after we finish recording, you're gonna have to send me the name of this visual novel because this sounds very, very interesting. And even though I've kind of been given a lot of the story, I kind of want to look into it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, that is a very creative way of using voice acting. It's not exactly the sort of thing. Well, maybe you could also convey it through writing or through the artwork or whatnot as well. But still, I mean, the voice acting aspect is a huge part of it, and that was like gives it so much impact of being able to make that distinction of two different selves of the character.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you have, because that was very interesting, because like the two like different halves of the characters represent him, but at different like character points for him.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm conveying my point right, but that is very impactful. Just from you telling me about it, I was like very like kind of invested. And I do think like that is one of the moments where like voice acting, and I hesitate to say necessary for anything, but I think that is like very impactful because like it's kind of like another aspect of set dressing in a way where like you use it to convey like this important aspect of the story. Where like, not sure, I haven't played the visual novel, but I just don't know like if it would be able to like hit as hard that moment without like the context that the voice acting provides. Because it's so crucial to understanding like his character and the like kind of like the journey that he's been on. So that is definitely one of the instances I'd say, again, even though I haven't played this visual novel, I would definitely say that was like voice acting is very essential to like reaching like maximum emotional potency for like, that build up.
And I mean, as a testament, yeah, it stays with me. Like, one of the things I really remember very well from that title, it was in a way emotional, but in a hopeful way, that you can have closure to things that were left undone before.
Mm-hmm.
And that was no, that is sorry, I'm like just kind of like because that was a very like wild like story to be explained as well, and I mean that in a good way. Like I like stuff like that. That's like a crazy like roller coaster of like emotional twists and turns. I definitely say voice acting very much elevates that, and because you want to have like that maximum emotional impact, especially if it's for something like kind of like happy or hopeful. Like I don't know, because like if that's like the ending point, especially like you really always want to nail like kind of like where you end a story and its characters. And again, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I feel like it would have been very hard to achieve like that same impact to close out the story without like the like emotional context and nuance that the voice acting gives.
Totally. On that note, then, I think this is a good point to wrap up this week's episode. Thank you again so much, NoahNovel, for stopping by our podcast. And thank you for all the information you've shared about your whole process of voice acting, but also, the tips and your own ideas and influences too.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It's fun to be able to kind of like talk and reflect on these things.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here, Noah. It was a blast. And also thank you very much to all our listeners. See you next week.